Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. We also have a link tree there with links to all the things that you might need, so you can just check everything out at the website right there, including a bio for our guest today. But before we dive into all of that, before we get the show started, this is the trigger warning. This is a horror podcast. We talk about horror things, so we could talk about sensitive subjects such as abuse, physical and emotional, or there may be vulgar language and or sensitive topics. But that is not what the podcast is about. It is actually an interesting psychological delve into what exactly it is we like about horror and where those interests come from. Mm-hmm. And with that out of the way, Steve, what do we got coming up?
Let's see. Well, same stuff as usual, although we're going into the holidays here.
Yeah.
Still doing 2 or 3 events weekly on Discord. That link is also available on the website. I think we'll skip all the other regular stuff that we talk about at the intro and just kind of dive right into it. Today we are talking to Mr. Marc L. Abbott, actor, author, director, best known for Hell at the Waystation, Slapface, Black Wake, The Theater of Terror. Welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Our pleasure. Before we get into the meat of the interview, you want to let people know what you're currently working on?
Well, currently I have a new novel out called Sinister Ascension, which is about a vampire who is looking for a host body because he is trying to ascend into a demon. He meets this girl that he figures is going to be the perfect host for him. But unfortunately, what he does not know is that her roommate is a medium. And she picks up on him, and using her abilities, she tries to prevent him from pulling this off.
Sorry, cock blocking.
Demon cock blocking.
Hey, we've gone through the disclaimer. We can drop the curses.
I never thought of it in that vein, but
she's that friend. Like, hey, you look pretty good. You want to be a demon host?
The other thing I'm thinking of is, vampires are known for, that sexual undertone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I'm using on that level as well. Yeah. Cool. Any idea when that's coming out? Or
it's currently out. Okay, so cool. It's making its rounds. So it's available through Mocha Memoirs Press. So and you can find it online. You just look up Sinister Ascension. You'll either get it through my website or through the publisher.
Okay. Also, we will put together, as Chris mentioned, a bio page for you on our website. So if people want to, they can also go to horrormakesushappy.com, go to the episodes page, look for your name. Click that. It'll take them to your bio page, and we'll link to whatever it is you want us to link to from there.
Okay, cool.
Well, let's see. The theme of this interview is less about your body of work and more about what you yourself have been a fan of. That said, it's not meant to be a therapy session. So if there's any questions we ask that you don't want to go into, that's fine. Just say pass and we'll move on.
Sure.
But that said, starting with childhood, what are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
I solely put this in the hands of my parents.
Mm-hmm.
My father was the reason why I love horror movies and TV shows. My mother is the reason why I love literature.
Okay.
So my dad was a huge fan of Universal horror monsters. Mm-hmm. And he introduced me to those. There was a show that used to come on Saturday nights on PBS. Mm-hmm. And he and I would sit up and watch all the classic horror films. Mm-hmm. And I was like, whoa, okay. So we're going in this avenue. All right. I really, really want to check these out. And if you were a child of the 70s and 80s, for some strange reason, ABC would always have these really, really terrifying horror movies, like movie of the week. And these were not Hollywood movies. These were like low budget movies that they made for that week. And those were, I don't know, there was something really visceral about that, feeling that being scared was just, I don't know what it was, but it was always an adrenaline rush because it was always the anticipation of what might happen. And then it happens, and then you just feel that rush go through you. And there's that moment where you're like, oh, I shouldn't have watched that. And then once it passes, you go, man, that was great. I need another one of those. I really need to see something go to next level. And so visually, that's how I fell in love with the genre. My mom introduced me to Edgar Allan Poe. Okay. So we went down a completely different avenue because now I had to create the images in my head. And I remember The Telltale Heart. I remember that thing made me so dizzy. It was one of those really euphoric stories where I was just like, I felt something reading that, like my head was swimming and I just couldn't keep it together. And I don't know if I would say I liked that feeling as much as I did watching horror films, but I was like, I really do need to tap into more of the literature-based stuff. And so it began with Edgar Allan Poe and it leapfrogged right to Stephen King because I had a junior high school teacher who didn't want to follow the curriculum. And so he assigned all of us Pet Sematary as a book to read. And of course,
what grade was this in?
This was 7th.
Okay.
7th or 8th grade. Yeah. Yeah. That's how I became more savvy with literature. And then I decided that's what I wanted to do. As I got older, I wanted to write that kind of stuff. But over time, even that grew because I was a fan of King. And then I discovered Saul. And then I discovered Barker. I completely ate up. Like anything Clive Barker put on the shelf, I was there buying it and completely, as a teenager, you completely miss all the undertones of what he was trying to say in his work. I loved Hellraiser, not realizing that Hellraiser was kind of like an allegory for BDSM. But it was like one of those things like I just didn't notice that. It wasn't any, as I became an adult and I was like, oh, pleasure through pain. Okay. Now that makes sense.
Yeah, when you're a teen, it just sounds like something cool, like a cool thing that a demon would say.
Yeah. And, but I ate it up. I loved just being scared. I loved that feeling of the goosebumps, frightening. As horror changed, though, I don't know. I can't really say I fell in love with the gore. Like the gore was cool. Like 15-year-old me, 16-year-old me loved the gore. And then, but as I got older, I don't know if I would say I became squeamish. I just didn't see the point of it anymore.
Okay.
If the slasher flick had a really good story behind it, a lot of the Italian horror, the Dario Argento stuff, which, many of them were cop dramas almost, murder mysteries. The gore made sense then, but, he's a slasher, and they're hunting him. Okay, so I get that part, but I guess it's fun in its own way. Like we still laugh at it, and it's like because of the ridiculousness of it. But but I've kind of shied away from it because it's just sort of like, well, I don't get anything out of it like I used to as a kid.
Right. So one of the things that is a theme in our podcast is after talking to you about the things that you've been a fan of, we then talk about any common themes that have been cropping up and what those might mean to you on a personal level, and then how those intersect with horror as a genre. And that's kind of how we get at, what horror really means to individuals. And what you're kind of talking about there about Terrifier, there are some people who enjoy the crossing of the boundary just for the sheer enjoyment of having done it. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, at least in your case, that is not, particularly what you personally get out of the genre, which is fine. Let's go back to some of the things that we've talked about here. So you mentioned the horror of Dracula, the fact that there was blood involved, that it was visceral, that at least at that point you were, I don't want to use the word turned on by the gore, but there was some sort of excitement there. Before that, though, you were talking about the Universal monsters. Any particular memory stand out to you from that stuff that you really liked?
So there were 5 of them that I watched in a row the first time. It was Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolf Man, the Invisible Man, and then came the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Mm-hmm. The one that always stood out to me was the Wolfman.
Okay.
I always loved. I became a fan of the transformation. I think that's the thing that really piqued my interest with horror stories. Something turning from one thing into something else. You know, even though we don't see the progressional change of Lugosi into Dracula, the idea that, you know, he turned into a bat or he turned into a wolf, and it's kind of either mentioned off screen or you see it, and kind of filling in the gaps of what that looks like in my mind. With the Wolfman, that complete transformation going from this, you know, this poor soul who gets cursed into this raging beast, was the one that always stood out to me. And I think that's where my love for werewolf movies came. I absolutely, if somebody were to ask me what's my favorite monster, I'm like, it's the werewolf. I've always been fascinated with that.
It's really funny to hear you say that, because like even before we started the interview, you were talking about your next book, which is a vampire thing. And then we were talking about, you know, the horror of Dracula was one of the first movies that you mentioned by name. And then out of these three, you know, the Universal Dracula was the first one you mentioned. So then for you to say that the Wolfman was your favorite, I was like, eh? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I can say, like, it's hard to, one of the things that's hard about horror, when you ask somebody what's their favorite horror film, who's their favorite horror character, the interesting thing is that people kind of jump around. Yeah. You know, people will say, well, you know, I love vampires, but this particular movie over here, which has nothing to do with vampires, is like the very first thing that really got me into something.
Well, like you said a second ago, but you know, vampires do have a transformation as well. But like you say, with Wolfman, it's maybe a little more obvious, visceral, shall we say?
Yeah,
well, maybe visceral too.
I think there's also like a body horror aspect to werewolves that the other creatures don't have too. I mean, there's always a stretching of the flesh and the cracking of the bones. Like you don't see that with things like with the vampire bat. They just poof and they turn into a bat. And then you have your other horror characters like Frankenstein, the Mummy. Creature from the Black Lagoon, they simply don't transform at all. So,
I mean, the thing with the werewolf though is that he has no control over that.
That too,
you know. Yeah. I mean, I know like the modern stuff now, like where they have them like change, like the lichens change, like they can physically force themselves to change. But the werewolf, I mean, you know, the one common thing here is that night has to come, no matter what. You know. You got to take a flip of the coin whether or not it's going to be a full moon or not. And if it is, you know, unfortunately, you know, either you're cognizant enough to say, you know what, I have to lock myself up somewhere so I don't get out, or it happens on you so fast that you don't have any, you can't reverse it. And I think that's just as horrifying when you don't have control over it.
Right. Sometimes you just wake up naked in a zoo. You got to find some balloons. It's a whole thing.
There it is.
A lot of our guests have talked about there being a dividing line where prior to this line, horror was scary to them, and then after the dividing line, it became an enjoyment for them. Was there such a dividing line for you, or was it always enjoyable?
It was always enjoyable. I mean, I guess I'm trying to see how I can put it. So the Universal and the Hammer stuff didn't send the kind of fright through me that Friday the 13th did.
Right.
There's a completely different feeling you get when a person is, you know, they're walking in an abandoned camp and walk into an empty cabin and then suddenly turn around and there's this axe. That's a completely different type of shock.
Yes.
And
you kind of started off with the shallow end of the pool with the Universals.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you celebrate Halloween when you were a kid?
Oh yeah. I did not grow up in the, you know, Halloween is the time of the devil kind of thing. And what was there not to love about Halloween? I mean, it was, you got a chance to dress up, you got a chance to go out, and it was a night full of horror movies, of scary stuff. And I absolutely enjoyed that as a kid.
Typically, the two questions we like to ask specifically relating to Halloween are, did you have a favorite costume or a least favorite costume?
Okay. my favorite costume when I was growing up, and I'm dating myself now, well, was the $6 Million Man.
Okay.
Nice.
It was those, you remember those plastic costumes where you went to Woolworths or somewhere and you had the plastic mask that went over your face, and then you had to kind of get in that jumpsuit kind of thing. That was my favorite. I don't think I ever had a least favorite.
Okay.
I don't think I ever had a costume. Like, my parents never bought me something that they were like, here, you wear this. And I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm not putting this on. So
you got lucky.
That was my favorite one.
Speaking of, for those of us who did.
You were forced to wear something you didn't like?
Yeah.
You got the Pagliacci version
it happens
of the rabbit costume.
Oh no.
Yeah. Did you have
go ahead. No.
Did you have any really scary dreams when you were a kid, or recurring nightmares?
Not, if I did, I don't remember them.
Okay.
I don't have anything from a childhood where I woke up like in a cold sweat or anything. Yeah, I was never the kid who watched a horror movie and had a nightmare.
Okay.
That was never a concern for my parents. Like,
good. How about real life? Anything scary in real life as a kid?
I think the scariest thing that ever happened to me as a kid, I got chased home by a dog, by a stray.
Right. Yeah.
Can relate.
That
common.
was one of, when I think about it, I don't know if the stray actually wanted to attack me,
just enjoy the chase.
Because I got away. If he really wanted to, he could have ran me down and just tripped me up. But it was one of those, a lot of barking, a lot of running, and me, the lead in your legs while you're trying to run.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me as a kid.
Yeah, that's common. Let's see. Flipping that question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or at bliss?
I guess whenever I was writing,
okay,
that was always my safe space. I like to kind of get inside of my own head and come up with stories and things of that nature. So if it was one of those deals like that was one of those. My parents are in another room. They're like, man, he's mighty quiet. We haven't heard from him in a while. Let's go and see what he's doing. And I'm at my desk in my room, and my dad's like, you okay? Yeah. What are you doing? Writing.
Mm-hmm.
You all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Okay. And then, he's in there writing. So, that's always been my happy place, I would say.
Okay. This next pair of questions would usually do them as a pair, starting with the negative one so we can end on the positive one. Do you remember the first person you hurt?
The first person, you know what? If there is a person that I think I hurt, it would have been my parents, but not in the sense of, it's more of a letdown.
Right.
I could never focus in school. My brain, like, if we got into a subject that I didn't know or couldn't get through, I resorted to writing, because that's the thing I knew. And so oftentimes what would happen is we'd be doing math and the teacher would look over and I'm writing a short story. And it's like, Mark, we're not working on writing right now. We're supposed to be doing the math problems. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not doing this. It doesn't make sense to me. And so I had an incident. I think the very first incident that kind of let my parents know what they were in for was coming up to the school, expecting this really great parent-teacher conference. And the teacher, in the middle of everything, goes, I need to show you something. Goes in the desk, pulls out this composition notebook and hands it to my dad. And he goes, what's this? She goes, that's your son's novel. And he goes, his what? And she goes, this is what he's doing when he's supposed to be paying attention in class. And it was that
bad news. Your son is an author.
He's an author. Exactly. You won't believe this. And we got to stop this right away because it's going to become contagious. And it was just that look on his face, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, and it's like, I don't get it. This is what I want to do. And he's like, This is not what you're supposed to
We
be
don't do
doing
that
in school. Yeah, exactly. It's like, of all the worst things a child could be doing, you're writing? How dare you write novels in class when you're supposed to be learning about the Revolutionary War? It's like, well, there's a ghost from the Confederacy in this story right here.
Yeah, there you go. They're related.
There you go. It's kind of the same thing. But it was just that look of disappointment because my mother was an educator. So it was sort of this,
we expect better from you kind of thing.
Yeah.
I would expect it if the mom was an educator that she'd, angle that, be like, okay, so that's good, but here's what we need to do. And,
Yeah, I will say that portion of my life has been a very tricky one because on the outside, when you think
is this going to be like one of those things where a mechanic's car never runs?
Yeah, there it is in the game. But that's not what they did. It's sort of like you're sitting there and a teacher is telling you your son. I remember I had an English teacher that told my parents, they were like, your son's a writer and a really good one. And you need to harness this because he's got a lot of talent. And we walk out the room and my father's like, so that's what you're doing all day, writing. Okay, so you won't do any of the other work you're supposed to do. How do you think you're going to get out of school? Did we not hear the same thing just now? And there was no, well, let's get him in a writing program, which is strange when you think about you two were the ones who introduced me to this. It was like
I learned it by watching you.
Watching you. Yes, exactly.
Who taught you how to watch? Who taught you about these horror things? You, Dad. I learned it from watching you. And it's like, and then that look on his face, like, I can't believe this was. But that's always been the strange thing about it for me. And I honestly think there's a part of me that believes that they were hurt that I didn't find something other than that so when you talk about hurting someone, I think there was an expectation of me doing something, just not this. And it was never really made clear what it was. What is it that you want me to do with my life?
They were hoping for George Washington Carver, I
guess, and they got what's his name who wrote Sleepy Hollow, Irving Washington. Washington Irving.
There you go. Yes,
they got Washington Irving instead of George Washington Carver. So that I would say that's my desire to be a horror author. I think kind of hurt them in a way.
Yeah, I think when your parents, raising a child, you have that archetype of what you want your child to be. I want them to be a doctor. I want them to be a lawyer, something successful.
Right.
Yeah, I can see how that would be disappointing if they come up and say, I want to be a writer, something drastically different than what they want. But in the end, it's a valid profession.
Yeah,
it
makes money.
It is.
I was very lucky in that, in a strange way, my father and I never really had that success conversation until I was somewhere in my 30s, mid to late 30s. And I realized I'd never had that conversation with him. And I asked him, at one point, how would you define success? And I think for some reason, I think he understood why I was asking because he got this look in his eye and he said something along the lines of, as long as you can keep a roof over your head and food on the table, you've done good. And so that was nice. Hopefully, are they still around? Do they get to see that you're keeping a roof over your head and food on the table?
Well, my dad's not. He passed away in 99. Interestingly enough, I was working on Law and Order as a production assistant when he passed away. And the last real conversation we had was about the fact that I was not writing for the show. And and I say it's interesting because it was one of those moments where I was like, so you've always kind of secretly championed for me to do this.
Right.
You just never wanted to come out and say it for some reason. And the conversation was more or less, he was frustrated over the fact that when I was in school, I thought I was going to be an author. And then I found television and film. So I wanted to write for that. And there's no easy way to get into any of these
Right.
industries. It's really, you can have all the talent in the world, but you still need somebody to give you an opportunity.
Right.
And I think what happened was he came to the set one day and he had a conversation with the executive producer, one of the executive producers.
Okay.
Because my dad was a cop. That was his profession. And so the fact that they had a retired police officer on set, was kind of a little exciting, and he was a fan of the show. And it was several weeks after he had that conversation. It was like he went into the office and they were like, "Oh, we'd like to talk to you." And he comes back and he's like, "I don't understand something. You have all of this writing talent. They all speak highly of you, but no one wants to give you the opportunity to do what you're good at. Why do you keep going into this place?" And of course, when you're doing it, it's sort of I got to take these baby steps first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he's like, and in his mind, he's like, "That's bullshit." He's like, "No, you have the talent to do this. And for whatever reason, they're not letting you get that opportunity. You should leave." And that was our big fight, I think a month before he passed away.
Whether it was true or not, he was expressing his fear or his concern that was going to be the case.
Yeah. He which is what my mother told me years later after he passed, that his greatest fear for me was of rejection. Mm-hmm. That he actually didn't feel that I was strong enough to handle the type of rejection that
Thanks,
comes
Dad.
out of that. Yeah. It's like, and I'm like, well, you want me to avoid rejection. Mm. And as a safe way, and that's not how the world works. Again, both my parents, my mother was an educator, my dad was a cop. You had civil service jobs where you just kind of moved up the ranks, as you went along. Writing, entertainment, all of this, it's not as fluid as that. There are, some people start out doing one thing. I started out, I wanted to be a writer. I ended up being a grip. Now I'm a gaffer. It's like, wait, how the hell did you go from being a writer to a gaffer? I suddenly realized I love working with lights, so it's not as fluid as most things. But because he didn't experience the things I had experienced, and I had experienced a lot of rejection long before that statement even came up. But I think that's what builds character. I mean, you have to, and it also helps you figure out what it is that you want to do. So
I would say there's probably room for both ways of looking at it, because, to his point, you could have left there and maybe, struck out on your own and done something and, through sheer willpower alone made something happen. But as you're saying, it's not always the way it is in the industry. And that's what I'm saying. You were doing it the way you wanted to do it. And, whether or not he saw that or cared for it is a separate conversation, I guess.
Yeah. But, and my mom's still around, and she, in her own way, she's proud of the successes that I've had with my work. I mean, I think how I satisfied everybody was I kept a regular job and still continue to pursue this. So I think the whole thing was the starving artist isn't glamorous.
Right.
Like, it's nice in movies, but when you can't pay Con Edison or you can't pay your phone bill and everything gets shut off, it's not, or you can't, you don't have food on your table. That's not really cool.
It makes sense for parents to want the best for their kids, obviously, Mm-hmm. So flipping that question around, do you remember the first person you helped?
Ooh, the first person I helped. That's in, I don't know who was the first person I ever helped. I'm trying to think. I always feel like I'm helping everybody. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't really pinpoint the first person I truly helped.
Okay.
That's kind of a hard one to answer, because I feel like any one of my friends or somebody in the family, they need something. I'm always, I'm going above and beyond to help. Job wise, the same thing. You need something on the job. Yeah, I'm there. I'm there to help. But I can't think of the first person I ever like kind of turned to and said, "Let me help you."
That is a perfectly acceptable response.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So going into teen years, I put down Hellraiser and Fright Night and Giallo here because when we were talking about it earlier, the way you had phrased it, it sounded like you didn't get to these until teen years. Is that accurate, or did these come earlier?
No, that's accurate. Okay. Yeah, I was 86 to the 90s because I was that was my high school years. Mm-hmm. So that's when I discovered Fangoria magazine. Mm-hmm. And sent my father into like one of the biggest tizzies in the world because that's what I wanted, a subscription.
To
Fangoria. And he was like, all right, well, let me see what this magazine is. And I handed it to him and he was like,
no, just blindly give me the magazine subscription.
He's like, oh, hell no. I'm not putting good money behind this. It almost
was like Playboy.
Exactly.
We'll talk.
He's like, you're great. Other kids stuff these nude magazines under their. I got the kid over here with the monster magazine, and he didn't want to do it at first, but then that's where my allowance money was going to at the newsstand every week. So finally got to the point he was like, you know what, fine, I'll just go ahead and subscribe you to the magazine, and I would get it in the mail. And
I'm laughing at myself thinking that this is like the 80s equivalent of not wanting it in your Google search history. He was probably afraid of what else is going to get in the mail based off of having that subscription.
Like the mailman's looking at my dad like, really, guy? I read it for the articles.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't really get into those types of movies until my teen years. Yeah. The more visually visceral films, the more gorier type movies. I had a group of friends in high school where we were all subscribed to Fangoria magazine, and the video store was our second home. So, you get home and your friend calls you and he's like, hey, you know what you should check out? See if they'll let you rent it at the video store. And, of course, we had teenagers working at the video store, so nobody followed that. You got to get your parent to come down here and rent this. So, it almost felt like you were renting porn because it's like, okay, what do we have? We got Goonies, E.T., Make Them Die Slowly, okay, and Beverly Hills Cop. Okay. And you kind of sandwiched it in there with everything else.
Have him back next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't give a fuck.
It was like, hey, how many?
You're right. It's like that buying condoms at the store thing. Like, yeah, all right, yeah, Goonies, and this one,
a pack of gum, and some condoms, and so
don't ask questions. Just bring it up.
Just put it in the bag.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you didn't get the BDSM part out of Hellraiser right off the bat. What were you picking up off? When you first watched it?
I just really thought he was a cool demon. I really thought that. I mean, I didn't really understand the pleasure through pain bit. I just thought part of it was that I thought the guy just liked being hurt. I didn't know he was getting some kind of
didn't like it that way.
No, exactly. I didn't think
it was more like a bizarro thing, like pain is pleasure, pleasure is pain.
I never, because nobody looked like they were enjoying themselves, getting hooks rammed through them.
That's a good point. Looking back on it, there's nobody doing an O face in the Cenobites.
It was like
the victims.
Yeah. Pinhead didn't look like he was enjoying having all of that stuff inside of him. It didn't, and so I never read that. Never registered with me. But when I first saw it, I was just a Barker fan, so I just loved his work, and so I just went to see it because Clive Barker had directed it. I was really into seeing it, and I just thought they were just cool looking demons. I just never put the two and two together in terms of the undertone.
Okay. What about Fright Night? You're going to say something?
I was just going to say it's just more like the style of it.
Yeah, stylistically. Fright Night was just fun. It was a different kind of vampire film altogether. I read the novel before I saw the film. I read the novelization before this film, and I fell in love with the novel so much. I was like, I can't wait to watch this. I guess this was the first time I really looked at something that had a blend of comedy to it. And there was something about Jerry Dandridge that was not like all the other vampires I had seen. He didn't seem sinister. He seemed very confident in himself, in the fact that, like, yeah, go ahead and tell your friends about me. See how that goes. Come back and tell me how that went. Yeah, that was the first time I really, really, truly looked at the vampire genre in a different way and saw that it could go. It didn't have to be just the vampire hunting victims. There was just so much more to it.
Okay. Let's see. What about Giallos? You kind of mentioned them in general. Is there anyone that stands out to you?
There was Opera, and then there was let me begin with Suspiria. Suspiria scared me. I think that was the first time in a long time I was genuinely frightened. That I couldn't, like, the first time I watched it, I couldn't figure out really what was going on, and I think that's what scared me, because I couldn't put my finger on it. And I literally 2 days after I had rented it, I watched it. I waited a day, and then I watched it again on the day it was due back. And that's when I realized, oh my God, these are witches. That's what this is about. And just stylistically, it was disturbing. Not the actual violence itself. It's sort of the lead up, the way he created this atmosphere within the school of who could you trust, who couldn't you trust, who was actually in on this from the get-go kind of thing. And I think that, and then couple it with, like, one scene I always remember, the girl falling into the pit of barbed wire, and just drawing that whole sequence of her trying to climb through that always, those films, that one, Opera, and then the one, it had a different name. It was known as Phenomenon here, but it had a different name across the seas. But that was the one with the girl who could speak to the insects. Jennifer Connelly played the lead.
Oh yeah, Creepers.
Yes. It had two different names. It had, one was called Creepers. I want to say it was called Creepers here, and Phenomenon in Italy. Donald Pleasance was in it, I remember, and it was that one I absolutely loved. That whole ideology that she could speak to the insects and control them, and they were the thing that would lead her to the bodies of the people that were being killed by this guy.
Was it just the fact that she could control insects that was interesting to you, like a superpower? Or?
Yes, yeah, because I'd never seen that before. That was, of all the things to control. I mean, you had, back in the day, you had Willard, and you had a couple of other, like, what's his name, could control dogs. That scared the hell out of me. Damien Thorne.
Yeah.
In what was it, the Final Conflict, when he was on the fox hunt and he turned the hounds on the priests, and I remember just sitting there going, "Huh, man's best friend, great."
Was that 3 when he was growing up as Sam Neill?
Yeah, he was. That's when he was Sam Neill, and that was the big thing in my house, because my parents had seen the first 2. That third one was, they didn't go see it. My father was, that's what I found out about my dad. He couldn't watch demonic movies. He walked out on The Exorcist. He left my mother there.
Okay.
Oh no.
Yeah, he left her behind. He went out into the lobby and had a cigarette and never returned to the theater. My mother said she sat there waiting for him to return. And she said, "You remember that iconic scene where the priest gets out of the car?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "That's when I realized he hadn't come back." And she goes, "I go outside," and he's like, "I can't go back in there." And she's like, "The exorcist has arrived." And he goes, "I don't care." He's like, "I know." And she goes, "That's when I realized your father had limits on certain horror films." So
I think you mentioned Make Them Die Slowly a couple times. That would have been right around this time frame too. What'd you like about it?
That was my part of my teenage time where I was like, this Friday the 13th isn't doing it for me. And so Make Them Die Slowly was a group thing. because it was a bunch of my friends who had come over. We went to the video store, we rented it, we went back to my house, and I think it was the first time ever I sat at home with friends and no one said a word. like it was like we're sitting there in pure utter shock, and I was like, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if this is something I really want to see, because cannibalism, that's the thing. Like, there are movies that you watched and you were like, I could tell this was, I could look at this and see the special effects. We couldn't see that here.
Right.
And we sat there like in like literal stunned silence, to the point where when the movie was over, we all kind of just looked at each other and was like, kind of like, what did I just watch? Mm-hmm. And no one, not a single solitary person said after that, I'm gonna rent this when I get home. I think we watched it. I think I've seen it one other time since, and I think it was at that point I was like, yeah, I think I reached my limit as a teenager. I don't think I want to go beyond this, because this was just way too disturbing.
Yeah, you're right about let them die or make them die slowly though. Like it was a lot more, I guess, possible with all the deaths, and the gore was so much more visceral, because I think they use actual guts, like from a butcher or something. Like they use actual organs and guts when the cannibals were eating them. So it's
pig, I think.
Yeah. So much more difficult to separate it from reality.
It really was. I think one of the things that hit me was that I didn't know if the natives were real natives or not. Like, it was almost like, were these people actors?
You know?
Or because that's when the question becomes, that's where the line got blurred. Because it was sort of like, are we watching actual cannibals? Like, we gave them stuff to eat. They didn't actually harm the actors, kind of thing. And I think that's where, when the line gets blurred like that. But yeah, I was like, at that point, I was like, yeah, cannibalistic. You know, there's zombie films where they are cannibals to a degree, but this was different. And but I did see Green Inferno eventually and laughed my behind off halfway through it. It was like, when they got high and they got the munchies. And I was like, oh, for Christ's sake, come on, man. But I guess you need that to break up the uncomfortability and the tension that you've already built. So
a little levity.
Yeah.
So was there anything in real life that scared you as a teen?
Ooh, something that scared. Oh, all right. This isn't just a teen thing. It's like for good, for life. I'm terrified of cockroaches.
Okay.
I am terrified of them. I cannot be around cockroaches. And I cannot tell you why. I cannot pinpoint anything in my life where something happened with a cockroach that scarred me. There's something about these things that are just gut-wrenchingly terrifying for me. And
I have memories.
We would get these really big ones that would come out of near the furnace because of the heat and the water, and nothing. You'd flip the light on and see something that big just sitting there, and you're like, what? Why? I don't understand why you are that big. You should not be. And they're scared of you, but then they start, like, the light comes on, they don't know which way to run. They come running toward you, and that's it. And my dad would be like, what the hell is wrong with you? It's a cockroach. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't.
That's not a cockroach. No, that was a flying demon bug.
Oh, and then that made it worse, because when I went to college, I was in Atlanta. I didn't know they fly.
Yep.
Right.
So imagine that one when the first night I had an encounter with one of those, and I was just like, yeah, no, this is that was my nightmare, that they could fly.
Cockroaches in the South are a different animal.
Yes,
they are. They are. They need their own category, because I see grown people running from them, like like we run from the rats here in New York. I think I would deal with the rat before I deal with that thing. So
I've had the pleasure of dealing with both. I've lived in the North and the South, and so we didn't talk about this too much during the pre-roll, but I've lived in New Jersey and Philly just to the other side of the river. And in my 20s, really 18, 19 years old, I didn't want to live at home with my parents, and also didn't have anything but high school degrees. So, minimum wage, working busboy at a restaurant, and, got an apartment in, I don't know how well you know New Jersey, but it was a place called Passaic, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that was important is that it had to be right next to the bus stop, because I didn't have a car at that time. And the only place that we could afford was like a six apartment. It was one building with a restaurant on the first floor and then 6 apartments above it. And 5 above it. No, let me think. Sorry, it was 4 above it, and ours was the first apartment, which was at the back of the restaurant, which made it worse because the place was not kept clean, obviously. And it was so bad that, like you talked about, you turn on the lights and they would scatter. In this apartment, they wouldn't scatter. They'd just be like, "Oh, you're home. What did you bring us?" And to this day, I cannot, if I see like a black spot on like an otherwise, like a white floor or something, I have to turn and look at it. Mm-hmm. And it drives me nuts because I know, and it's, that was I'm 50 now. That was 30 years ago. And I'm still looking at little fucking dots, making sure they're not roaches.
Trauma sticks with you.
Yes, it does. It really does.
So yeah, I feel you on that one. Flipping that question around, was there ever a time in your teens when you felt exceptionally calm or safe or at bliss?
When I was with my friends, when I was with my tribe, okay. We had a way of keeping each other calm. It was a group of boys. I mean, we were rambunctious as hell, but there was, if something happened, something traumatic or something, you were in a bad mood or something like that, that group of guys they were great. We shared, because we shared interests in horror mostly, but being around them, that was always the calm for me.
It's very interesting that you have a group of friends who was into horror, because usually, so for most of our guests, they're not either. There was nobody in their friends or family group who were fans of horror, or they might have had somebody who in their family who were fans. Mm-hmm. But then it's rare to also have friends, although 1 or 2 people that we've talked to have. And in your case, it's in your family and you had a friend group. So that's very interesting.
Or usually if it's a friend group, it'd be like 1 or 2, but it sounds like the whole gang was into it.
Yeah, there was like 6 or 7 of us.
Wow.
That were into it. And then I had my friend, my neighborhood friend, Michael, was into it. And he actually, I will never forget how upset I got with him, because he recommended Reanimator to me. Ah. And I was like, "What's it about?" He's like, "Oh, it's about a mad scientist."
Yeah.
That's all he said.
That's all he's not wrong.
And I get the movie, and I'm like, "What in God's name am I watching?" And I go back to him, and I was like, "Dude, why in the hell didn't you not warn me?" He said, "Well, I told you it was about a mad scientist." I was like, "That's not mad." I was like, "That is Frankenstein. That is some other level shit. What? You should have warned me of the level of gore that I was about to sit through." And he was like, "Well, did you hate the movie?" I was like, "Of course I did.
I loved it."
I was like, "I loved it." Well, when it comes on HBO, I've got to make a recording and keep it. But next time, warn me of these things. So, and he was actually the one. He went to every Fangoria Weekend of Horrors with. Like, whenever the convention came to town, that was my very first convention I ever went to. Was Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. I begged my parents. I saved up my allowance money. I begged my parents to go. My father just kind of was like, "It is what it is. Just go." And I lost myself at the convention. I met every one of my heroes at that convention, and it was the second. If you guys don't mind me going into this about the convention, my second time going, Clive Barker was going to be there, and I remember telling my mother, I wanted to stay to see Clive Barker. This was a Sunday. And she said, what time is Clive going to be? I was on payphone talking to her. She goes, what time is he going to be on? I said, he's on at 5. She goes, you're supposed to leave at 5. I said, yeah, I know, but I have to see. I have to see it's Clive Barker. She goes, I don't care. You need to come home. And I was like, Mom, like I don't ask for much in life, but I need this. I need to be here for the autograph session, the whole thing. And you have to picture me, 15, 16-year-old me, in the lobby of this hotel screaming to the top of my voice on a payphone. And my buddy's kind of standing in the corner, like literally taking bets on like he's not gonna stay. His mother's terrifying. My mother's the type of woman that would have come to the convention and had them make an announcement for me to come to the front. That was the kind of person she was. And so I never got to see him. And so Nightbreed comes out. I write this letter to Fangoria about how angry I was at how the mistreatment of this film and how they it wasn't done justice.
No, they butchered it. I'm so glad it came out with the director's voice.
Yes.
Just a special name for it. But yeah, how it was originally intended.
And it hurt me. And one evening I come home, my friend Mike, he happened to be coming by. He came by and I'm going through the mail. And I said, hey, look at this. And it's a letter. It's got my name on it. There's no return address, nothing, just my name. And it says USA underneath my address. So I look at Mike and I was like, hey, you remember we put our names in that thing at Fangoria to be zombie extras in that Canadian movie with Linnea Quigley? And he goes, yeah. I was like, how much you want to bet this is an invite for that? And he goes, dude, if that is, like, how we getting to Canada? I was like, I don't know.
Right.
So I said, let's just see what they say. So I opened the letter and I'm like, okay, Mark Abbott, dear Mr. Abbott, thank you so much for your kind words on Nightbreed. I really appreciate it. Good luck with your endeavors. Sincerely yours, Clive Barker.
You got a letter from Clive Barker.
And when I tell you, I've seen people fangirl. But the scream that came out of my body, Mike was like, yo, what the hell? And I'm like, I toss him the letter and I'm like, I can't even say.
No, there's no words.
And he's reading it and he's like, no way. And he starts screaming. And the next day I go to school to my group and I was like, guys, I can't. And I just hand the letter to them. So my friend Jeremy, he's like looking at it and he goes, what the fuck? He goes, and then, you got that one guy in the group like, I call bullshit. You type this up yourself. Yeah. I'm like, why would I do that to myself and bring it to the... So we went through this whole thing where I literally in tears, because I've gotten this letter from one of what I consider one of the greatest horror writers of our time. And we go to Fangoria the next year. Clive Barker is there. And
did you get him to sign it twice?
This will forever be etched in my brain because there was a room just solely devoted to his work, like his art and everything else. We had just been in the room. They ushered us out and he walks in and they closed the door. Because, but again, the fans saw him. They started losing their minds. People started lining up outside the room. The security guy's like, I don't know why you're lining up. Nobody's going in there. This at the end. So I walk over and I said, hey, listen. And the guy's like, I'm sorry, we're not letting anybody in. I said, no, just do me a favor. And I go in my bag and I take at this point, the letter is like in a clear, protective
laminated
sleeve. And I said, can you go inside and show this to Clive Barker? I just want to authenticate that it came from him.
Okay. And he looks not even asking for an extra autograph. Just give me confirmation that it's real.
He looks at it. He looks at me and he goes, "Stay here." So he goes in the room and he comes back and he goes, "Are you by yourself?" And I was like, "No, these are my friends." So he goes back inside. He comes back out. He opens the door and he goes, "Come on in."
Yeah.
So we go, and I mean, it's literally like Dorothy going to see the Wizard of Oz. It's the group of us kind of like all huddled together, and we had just been in the room, but it's almost like something about the room changed. And he is standing behind this table talking to a couple other people, and he's got the letter in his hand. And he's stopped, and we walk up, and he looks around, and he goes, "Which one of you is Mark?" And I raise my hand, and he goes, and he sticks his hand out. He goes, "It's so great to meet you. I'm Clyde Barker." And I shake his hand, and I was like, "So you did write the letter?" And he goes, "Yes." And I start crying, like uncontrollably crying. And my buddies are like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And he literally leads me over to a chair and sits me down. And he looks at my friend Jeremy, and he goes, "You got to give him a moment." He's like, he's a fan. He goes, he'll be okay. He's like, he'll be okay. And he's like, "You want something to drink?" And I couldn't stop. Like, I was overwhelmed with emotion. And he was like, "I'll give you a minute and then we can talk." And I'm just sitting there like, I cannot believe this has happened. And he gave us 10 minutes of his time, which seemed like an eternity. Yeah. He signed everybody's stuff. If any one of us that had something that his name on it, he signed videos, he signed books, he signed everything. He took pictures with us. And, and he asked me, he's like, on the way out, he goes, "What is it that you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be an author." And he goes, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Good luck with that." And I said, "The first story I ever write, I'm going to give it to you." And he was like, "I look forward to reading it." Of course, my first story has never been sent live, Mark. I hope one day soon I get to see him and pass one of my pieces of work off to him. But that was the most, if you had that in your questioning that you're going to ask me about a moment in my life that was like forever changed, that was it for me.
That definitely counts
for the calm or safer at bliss moment. Not very calm. Bliss, yes.
Safe, but not very calm.
Yeah. We'll go with bliss. That sounds like bliss. Maybe an overload of bliss.
Yeah.
That's awesome, though. Such a good guy. Yeah. There are levels of other things that I would expect him to do with a fan, like, from the say no to the only let you in. To when you start crying, certain celebrities would be like, "All right, get him out of here." And just the best on every interaction that he possibly could have had.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I did get to meet him very briefly. He was very kind to autograph a T-shirt that we are donating to. I don't know if you're familiar with the charity Scares the Care.
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
For our 5th anniversary, what we were doing was getting a T-shirt with our logo on it, autographed by as many of our former guests as we could, and then we were going to donate it to Scares the Care, and he was kind enough to donate an autograph, even though he has not been on the podcast. And we would, of course, love to have him on, but unfortunately, his I don't know if you've seen or heard anything recently, but his voice isn't doing so well right now. I don't think he could do a 2-hour interview.
You do a half an hour interview.
Yeah. So
we both got to meet him. So that's something.
Yeah. One of those things that I'd be more than happy to do it via email if there was an option. Let's see. Moving into adult years, I think you'd mentioned Saw earlier. I'm guessing that would have been adult years.
Yeah, the torture porn segment of life. Yeah, I did. It was interesting because I think that's when I started to realize those movies weren't. They hold a particular place in the genre. I do not hate on them at all. I don't think that
just not for you.
Yeah, I've never been because I always look at these films as the films I grew up on, because we all said the same thing when we were growing up. Parents are like, these are just awful and they're horrible films. There's no place in society for things like this. But horror changes with the times. It reflects the timeline it's in. And so when we got to Saw, Turistas,
Hostel,
yes. Audition, we get to that point. It was just sort of like, okay, I understand the entertainment value behind this. I don't understand why it has to be so visceral.
What kind of stuff from your adult years would you say, horror media have you enjoyed?
Oh, okay. So I've enjoyed the Conjuring series up to a degree. I think that whole universe that they created, the Nun, the Conjuring stuff, I've enjoyed those. I really, for some reason, have enjoyed found footage. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You can only do the same thing over and over for so many times before people are just sort of like, I'm good, and then, but found footage, for some reason, I guess there's a part of your brain that recognizes that this doesn't look like a movie. It looks like somebody did this with with their iPhone or something. So there's a level of realism to it that isn't the same as the Hell House series. This one about the people who opened up the haunted house on Halloween and then conjured up some dark spirits. They just did a third one called Hell House Lineage, I think it's called. But this one isn't. It's not found footage. This one is an actual film, and it doesn't feel the same.
Let's go back to The Conjuring for a minute. You talked about that whole universe being of interest to you. What first things that pop to mind when you think about it?
Your house being possessed. That these things are not ghosts; these are demons. The angry spirits that just because I guess throughout time we often talk about ghosts and spirits moving through a space. We never think about, like, when we talk about demonic possession, it's always the body gets taken over, and from the Exorcist years, the levitation and everything. But the fact that something literally could just move into your home and decide to terrorize you for no reason whatsoever, but the fact that it can, that was just disturbing to me.
So is there something in particular about possession that scares you?
Yeah.
Not being in control of yourself.
Yeah. Loss of control. It's a big one.
It also has to deal with soul. The idea that something could enter into your body and push your soul out of the way and just start doing whatever it wants to do, or the fact that you're in there and you see this happening and you cannot stop it from happening. You can't reach out to somebody and say, hey, that's not me. Don't believe what you see. I think that's, to me, is terrifying in and of itself.
Very good reason. Same thing with, locked in syndrome and being in a coma.
Yeah.
What about VHS?
I'm a huge fan of short stories. I love vignettes, and it combines two of my favorite things: found footage, and it's a very short. The stories are very pointed. What I love about VHS is that these films look like they had supposedly been shot on VHS, and you can't figure out. Again, it's the same thing with Make Them Die Slowly. Some of these shorts, I can't tell the fake from the real. The VHS 2, there was a story in there about a guy who went to a cult, and this demon, they're birthing a demon.
Yeah.
And the demon comes out, and he's running through the center, like trying to get away. And this thing, whoever did the effects for this, I gotta give them a whole lot, because I couldn't see if this was CGI, you did one hell of a job, because I could not see that. And I remember just screaming at the television for this guy to run. Like, I was like scared for him. And then but when he got away, the thing caught up to him. And it was sort of like, wow, this was really well done. They did one with Martians that attacked these children in the house.
Oh yeah, no, that was the original one.
And that scared the hell out of me, particularly when they started like grabbing the cops. Like, they started grabbing the adults, and I was like, wow, this is not even only the kids are fantasizing about this, and just beautifully done. I just love the kind of work that they do in that series. I think one of the best things about found footage movies is that there's no mood music. There's nothing leading you towards something. Something's about to happen. Let's start playing the music this particular way. There's no soundtrack.
No cues.
Like, I'm almost annoyed by that at this point with horror movies. When you hear the music swell up and it gets tense, like, all right, something bad's going to happen now. And I love that about found footage.
Or they would at least they want you to think there will be.
Or that, which is good also, and sometimes also not welcome and worse. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's the trope that they all use.
Right.
So I love it for the simple fact that you really don't know what's going to happen. And actually, one film recently did that. It was not a found footage film called In a Violent Nature.
Yes.
And I absolutely love this film because you see it from the point of view of the killer from the whole time, not from the traditional way we see movies where, the killer's in the background or something like that. You get to follow him along. So going back to the found footage, that's one of the reasons why I love it so much, because you're not expecting anything could happen. And you're not being led by a soundtrack in that sense. It looks real. You're kind of in the moment with everybody, and that's one of the reasons why I love it so much.
Okay. Have you been terrified of something as an adult in real life?
I can't think of one. I'm sure there has been something that has terrified me, but I can't think of one that when I was as an adult.
Flipping it around, has there been a time in your adult life when you were exceptionally calm or safe or at peace or bliss?
Sharing my love of early monster movies with my daughter. We have been watching to sit with her and share those experiences, and then seeing her start to fall in love with the stuff that I fell in love with has been it's beautiful. It's and it's not forced. It's not something like, it's like, I'll ask her, do you want to watch X, Y, and Z? And she says, yeah. And we still share this really hilarious thing about King Kong, where we watched the original black and white, and she asks me in the end, she says, the guy who took Kong off the island, what was his name? And I said, Carl Denham. She goes, yes. She goes, so he doesn't go to jail, huh? And I'm like, what? She goes, so he lets this ape loose in New York and all this damage and nobody arrests him? She goes, that doesn't make any sense. And I was like, that's what you took. I was like, that's what you got from this movie? And then, just as a extra aside, I showed her the ending of the Peter Jackson film, where Kong gets it. And he falls off the building and Carl Denham comes out. And she goes, is that Carl Denham? And I said, yeah, that's the guy that's Jack Black. He's playing Carl Denham. And she goes, so no arrest again, huh? Just gonna walk away.
Nice. Learning young.
Like, wow, you really want this man to go to jail?
Well, I mean, he deserves to go to jail. He's loosed a giant primate on New York City and lots of destruction. I mean, there's property damage. There's
negligence at the very least.
Those people in the Bronx, they're never going to get their homes back thanks to this guy. So,
yes.
I mean, does he have a permit for this exotic animal?
Exactly.
There's at least civil penalties.
Yeah, I actually, I think the one that really did it for me, she fell in love with the Ghostbusters animated cartoon.
Ah, nice.
That's a classic. And one afternoon, I had nothing else to do. I took her into the city, and I took her to the station house. Just to see the look on her face when she looked up and saw the Ghostbuster sign, and she was like, this is a real place? And I'm like, I completely forgot what that's like. As an adult, you forget those moments. And they let us come inside and see the firehouse. Like, we were like, there was a group of people trying to get in, and they were like, yeah, we don't let people come in and walk around and stuff. And they walked away, and the guy looks over and sees us standing there, and he's like, you want to come in?
You can go in.
And I was like, are you serious? He's like, come on in. And so we went in and got a chance to see the inside of the firehouse and everything. So that was a lot of fun.
Cool. So this next question is not just going to be about horror; it could be any genre, and could be over your entire life. What movie would you say you have watched more times than any other?
It's a mad, 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 mad world.
Okay.
Oh my, that is one of my favorite comedies. I saw that when I was I have to say I was 8 years old and laughed like I had never laughed before. And every time I watched that movie, I laugh at something different. Because as I got older, I started to get more of the jokes. And it is the perfect film to show just what money does to people, the lengths to which people will go for monetary gain. And it's one I haven't shown my daughter this one yet. And I think she's about ready. Like, we're gonna sit and watch it at some point because it's like 3 hours long almost. But it's the one movie that I think I've watched so many times. It's second to Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay. Well, that kind of ties into the next question, which was going to be: would you consider that your favorite movie, or would you consider something else your favorite movie?
Like Little Shop of Horrors.
So here's what we'd have to do with this, because my favorite films, I have to do it in genre because it's different. So believe this or not, you're not going to believe my favorite horror film is Psycho.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Though I love monster movies and everything, Psycho is my favorite. For comedy is Mad, Mad, Mad World. Musicals is Little Shop of Horrors.
Okay.
Westerns is Once Upon a Time in the West, the Sergio Leone film with Charles Bronson. And for romance, a movie called, it's got two different titles: A Matter of Life or Death, that's the British version name, and the American version is called Stairway to Heaven, with David Niven, who plays a fighter pilot who he was supposed to die, but the angel didn't grab him in time. And now he falls in love with this woman on Earth, but now heaven wants him. And so he has to go on trial in heaven to see if they decide to let him stay on Earth or not. And I guess for thrillers, it would have to be Silence of the Lamb. And I guess, do I have a romantic comedy that I like? I'm sure there's one out there that I like. And for anime, there's Galaxy Express 999, and I think that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got something in everything.
What do you like about Psycho?
Oh, jeez, what's there not to like?
First thing that comes off the top of your head. The
scene with the detective going up the stairs and getting slashed in the face by a mother. Because I never knew about that scene. We all hear about the shower scene.
Right. That
scene completely did it for me. That sold me on the film when I saw that, because I was not expecting it. And it's a horror film. It's a psychological thriller. It's got all these little nuances in it. The acting is just spot on. Just the nervousness of the film, the uncomfortability of Norman Bates, and then, of course, finding out at the end, what we didn't know all along. I wish I had seen that when it came out in the 60s, because I would have loved to be in the theater to see people's reaction to it.
Next question, I think I know the answer to, but we'll ask anyway, just so as not to put words in your mouth. Do you see any common threads about what kind of horror you love? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, supernatural, psychological?
Do I see any common threads? I guess the one common thread is just the majority of these horror films that I've loved over the years really fall into a thing where they're fantastical almost. They almost cannot happen. I shouldn't even say almost. All the slasher flicks I've loved, the guy keeps coming back at the end. For all of the paranormal movies, that entity is still around in the end. It's still going to be there. It's going to come back and do something at some point. Even the found footage, films, we're going to see they kind of regurgitate themselves.
Mm.
You know, they may tell a different story, but you're still getting the same kind of formula.
Mm. So this would be the spot where we kind of point out any common themes that have been cropping up multiple times in the call, and then maybe talk about that a little bit. For you, I mean, it really boils down to power dynamics, but it shows up in a number of different ways. You know, we've talked about even everything from, you know, werewolves and Dracula, transformation, not having any control over that, possession has to do with lack of control, your enjoyment of phenomena, and maybe fear of Damien about, you know, the control over insects or dogs. Talking about what you do enjoy out of horror, fantasy has come up quite a lot. Even in terms of not liking gore, excessive gore, because it ruins the fantasy element of it. And then the things that you have felt most at peace with, time with friends, time writing, sharing monster movies with your daughter, for example. These are all times where you maybe weren't conscious of a level of control, but there was safety in the control was sort of what's the word I'm looking for? There's an element of it there, even though it wasn't the most omnipresent part of it, if I could put it that way. Does that sound accurate to you? Or do you think that there's something else that you get out of horror that we haven't talked about? Does it sound close and maybe it could be tweaked a little bit?
I mean, I think you hit I think you got it. Primarily, I mean, horror has. I mean, it's for me. Horror has always been a place for me to go to get away from the everyday. You know, even sharing it with friends and family and my daughter. And it's one of those places that I can go where I guess I have some control over it in some way. You know, as a writer, you know, you control the narrative. Watching it with friends, you kind of control the remote in a way to seeing what you want to see, what you don't want to see. But I've always looked to the genre as it's different, you know, and it is a form of escapism. It's not the same. I don't have to deal. It's not dealing with too much of the realities of the world. And I guess in a way, as you pointed out with the gore, you know, we got enough of that, you know, in what we see almost in our daily lives. I think we need to tone it back a bit. The great thing about being scared is that you can, in a horror film, you get scared and then it goes away. You know, you shut the TV off, you walk out of the movie theater and it's over. You know, you're not having to relive that moment over and over again. So that's one of the things that I can say about it.
Mm. I don't know if it's just been luck of the draw or what, but you know, we've done over 150 interviews now, and there's been almost no overlap whatsoever between the people we've talked to who are fans of horror and true crime. True crime is definitely its own genre, or people who are, I don't know what adjective to use, but there's some element of the holy shit, this actually happened that they seem to enjoy. But for horror fans, at least, like I say, the ones that we've talked to, 150 now, and there's been almost no overlap whatsoever in terms of that.
You mean liking true crime?
There are a number of guests for whom it never really came up as a topic, but for those where it did come up as a topic, every single person we've talked to has landed on the side of, no, I want it to be fantasy. I don't want it. As soon as I think that it might have been real, it turns me off.
You know, that's interesting. I mean, I've watched documentaries. Mostly because I'm curious as to know why the person did what they did. Not so much to not because I'm like a huge fan of true crime or anything like that. I've watched, like, they did the Dahmer movie that they did on Netflix, which I thought
I'm not saying that horror fans aren't also fascinated by true crime. I'm just saying that there's a clear delineation between what horror fans enjoy and consider to be horror.
Right. Oh, no. That was my point. It was, I don't look at true crime. I mean, true crime is a different type of horror in my book. Our horror is the thing we want to get away from when we talk about true crime. I don't see myself sitting down writing a serial killer novel kind of thing, because that's too close to home. That's something we deal with all the time. I mean, let's be clear. Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, they're all killers. At some point, they may mirror something somebody did somewhere along the line. But the point is that these people, these individuals, don't exist, and the plane that they exist on is so on the other side of things. It's a form of escapism. You're not being reminded that true evil lurks in the world like that. I guess that's the best way I could put it.
Well, it's interesting the way you said that there, because if exploration of power dynamics is something that speaks to you, but not to the degree that you would want to touch on true crime, how can I say this? Normally, the follow-up question is that we ask our guests is, okay, so we've identified something that's important to you. Why horror? Couldn't you potentially, explore that in other genres? And in your case, it's interesting because, power dynamics is something that can be explored in other genres, potentially true crime. But there's, like we're talking about here, there's this delineation between what aspects of it you're comfortable with dealing with in horror versus what you're not.
The thing with true crime is it happened. It's something that can be traced back, as opposed to creating a monster that carries those particular traits. So, for example, there's a huge let's do it this way. Let's look at Gacy in terms of him being a serial killer dressing up as a clown. We've got tons of clown movies about killer clowns, but what makes those fantastical is their behavior. You can take those behaviors and stretch them. You can create them to be over the top. Some of them just downright ludicrous. But in the fictional sense, there's a story there. Jason kills because someone killed his mother and he wants revenge. Serial killer is killing and we don't know why. We don't ever get that answer. They may say something in court, but at the same time, if you look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if you look at Psycho, why was Norman Bates doing what he was doing? Because mother was a control freak, this, that, the other thing, he was sexually repressed. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, these folks are just crazy backwater folks in Texas who, for whatever reason, are both cannibalistic and whatever. Why did Ed Gein do what he did? We really can't explain that. And that level of horror is extremely terrifying, because I will take a line out of the movie The Warriors when they get back to Coney Island and he asks the head of the Rogues, "Why did you kill Cyrus?" And he says, "No reason. I just like doing things like that." In horror, there's an answer. There's a reason. We can define it. In real life, we can't define this. You can have a psychologist tell you all the little psychological profiles and things, but why did you kill and eat those people? I don't know. Something just inside me said that that's what I needed to do. Horror film. Why are you doing these things? Because, this is something our family has done for generations.
It occurs to me that there are subgenres of horror, specifically like cosmic horror, where you don't always have an answer. But when I was thinking that, it also kind of amused me. We haven't talked about cosmic horror. And so maybe is it that, is there some part of you that wants and or needs that answer, that like maybe that there's a reason why this type of horror speaks to you in ways that cosmic horror doesn't?
You know what? I can almost say yes to that. At the same time, the thing about cosmic horror, though, I think what's different with cosmic horror is that it touches on something completely unknown and a possibility of something existing beyond what we are. funny you say that, because I think I can accept not having an answer to that.
Because the source isn't human to begin with?
It's not. It doesn't function the same way we do. And so the more grounded stuff, the slashers and things of that nature, there seems to be an answer to that. And we're connected to that in a different way. I think our level of fear with cosmic horror is completely different, because it's part of the fear of the unknown, but then the fantastical part about it is that there is a possibility. I think that's why people are so fascinated with aliens, where it's like, we don't know what's out there beyond the world that we live in other galaxies, on other planets. Could there be something out there existing? Could there be another type of deity that moves through the universe other than the deity that many of us believe in? I guess in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's possible. That's possible. I don't really need the answer to it. I don't think I would be shocked, if something came here was like, hi, I'm from another galaxy. Yeah, sounds about right.
It's just not the part of the sandbox you're playing in.
Right. But with this kind of horror, when we compare it to like true crimes and stuff like that, we face this on a daily basis. We see it in front of us. We read about it in the papers, in the magazines. And I think that's the thing that some people are just fascinated about. It's that, why are you doing this? In a horror story, we have an answer. As an author, you can give a direct answer. You can say, oh, this is what's wrong with him. Even in a psychological sense, where it was like, he's schizophrenic. There's many different levels of schizophrenia, but tell somebody that they were schizophrenic in a horror film. Oh yeah, they're just crazy. Okay, that makes sense. I don't really need to know any more than that one word that you gave me. But say they're not, then it becomes I don't understand why somebody would do something like that.
Chris and I have joked about having a T-shirt that has a bunch of quotes on it from our interviews, and I think one that would go well from this interview is when you said night has to come no matter what. And so maybe for you, a lot of this is summed up in how you process that reality.
Yeah, I guess it's everything has a beginning, everything has an end, and everything that happens in the middle, you have to just kind of, if you can control it, great. If you can't, then what do we do about that? If we are not, like I said, the fascinating part about the transformation is when you don't have control over the transformation, what happens, during that space of time?
Emotional processing.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I've said a number of times on these calls too, that, people like to say that we're pattern finding machines. I like to say we're also emotional processing machines.
Or both.
Yeah, I can go with both.
Cool. Well, I think we got a pretty good summary on, what you love out of horror and why it's important to you. Before we hit the closing here, do you want to again remind people what it is you're currently working on?
Currently, my newest novel, Sinister Ascension, is out. So I've been kind of pushing that out to the public. I have a couple of short stories that came out earlier this year that dealt with cats, because I like cats. Mm-hmm. So I've got a couple in anthologies. One called A Future for Ferals, which they're actually taking the proceeds from that and donating it to animal shelter.
Yes.
And the Friends and Foes of Zenobia, where I have one of my animals from another story that I did make an appearance in that one. And that's that anthology is by Denise Tapscott, so that's out. And I'm just waiting to see what happens with 2026. I'm just steadily writing something, and I think I'm supposed to be in a new film next year, but we're still in kind of working things out with that.
Cool. Well, this should release towards the end of January, early February. So we will, like I said, get together with you offline to get, some pictures that we can use in slideshows for promotional stuff, get whatever links you want us to share. And as we said at the start of the call, if anybody wants to find out more about you, they can just come to horrormakesushappy.com, go to episodes at the top, and then look for your name, click on that, and it'll take you to his bio page, and we'll link to whatever you want to link to from there. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you to everybody out there listening. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff.